Hey everyone, welcome to this episode of Erskine Roundtable. Today I'm going to be joined by two of our resident directors. My name is Grant Lawson. I am the creative production coordinator working in marketing and communications here at Erskine College. Formerly, I was a resident director for just under 3 years and worked with these two fine people. So I will let them introduce themselves to you all and share the students that they're over and maybe even the specific buildings that they oversee here at Erskine.
Oh, I'm going first. Okay.
Yep.
My name is Jessica Lawson. I am currently the assistant housing coordinator at Erskine, as well as an RD over apartments, villages, and honors.
And I am Morgan Roberts. I am also a resident director. This is my second year, and I oversee Carnegie and Robinson, which are freshmen and upperclassmen women's dorms.
Awesome. It's good to have you here, guys. I feel like this question can be hard to answer, and I used to have to put my answer together. But how would you, in your own words, describe the role of a resident director?
Go ahead, Morgs.
To my RAs, I describe myself as a boss, mentor, friend, coach. I feel like each part of that towards them, I am their actual boss. I can write reference letters for them when they graduate, but also I want to mentor them, to be a friend to them. I want them to come to me with questions and real life problems that they're having. I also want to coach them in their leadership skills, style, development on a personal and in the job sphere. To the rest of my residents, I feel like I'm kind of a catch-all, like the resource that lives in the building with them to kind of handle anything. So maybe they are really struggling to kill a cockroach, or maybe they're struggling with their roommate, or they're really excited because they got to play in their first college game, and they'll come to me with all of those. So kind of a catch-all for the wider sphere of the residents I oversee.
Yeah, I think as you both know, it's not easy to describe what we do, and every day looks completely different, as Morgan said. I think overall that when I think about what a resident director does is just walking alongside of those students, and like Morgan said, whether that's something really good or really bad, or somewhere in the middle. And so just building those relationships with it, whether it's with students or with your RAs who have a little bit more leadership, but just walking alongside of them and mentoring them or leading them along the way.
That's awesome, guys. I feel like it's a really unique role, and again, I speak from experience too, but I feel like there are a lot of different paths to get to a role like this, a role where you live on a college campus with college students. So for each of you, what was kind of your path to get here, not necessarily just to Erskine, but to the role of resident director?
Yeah, so I started in undergrad. I was an RA only at Messiah University for a year, just my senior year of college. And I really enjoyed it. I had a floor of 40 girls. And so at that point, I was going into the social work field. My degree was in social work. That was my path. And I pivoted last moment to say, actually, I want to go into res life. And so I worked in PA for a year as a graduate assistant, resident director, which was part-time, and then I wanted something more full-time to be able to do the job all the time. And so I found Erskine College and have been doing it ever since, and been here, this is my third year, and plan to work in res life for a really long time. So
That's awesome.
For me, I would say I was an RA for 2 years in college. I went to school at Moody Bible Institute, had an amazing boss, Sarah Youssef. And I loved my job. I remember talking to her in one of my last one-on-ones, and I was crying. I was like, Sarah, I don't know what I'm gonna do. I'm graduating. I know I wanna go be a missionary, but this is truly like my dream job is what I'm doing right now, but it has to end because I have to graduate. And she looked at me and said, Morgan, I know this has never been on your list, but have you ever thought about working in residence life? And at the time, I was like, yeah, maybe, no way. That requires me to go get a master's before I could even enter the field, so I'm not going to do it. So I graduated, went home, took a year working in kids and family ministry, loved it, but always wondered at least in my church, there are a lot of really solid Christian families, but then their students were going to college and were encountering issues that they'd never encountered before. And I remember thinking, I want to meet those students when they go to school. So I started looking around, knew that I wanted to work at a Christian school, applied to a couple, and then ultimately landed at Erskine. That was probably one of the best decisions I ever made, was deciding to move from Washington to South Carolina to work here. So.
It's funny, I know a lot of people probably know, but Jess and I were both, when I was a resident director, we both were on Morgan's interview.
You guys were.
Morgan, I don't know do you think she says it just to humor us, or do you think she means that she came here because of us? She said that to us a couple times.
Oh, I did come here because of you guys.
Listen, that's a high sell right there. I don't know if anyone else can claim that.
Only Morgan.
Only me.
On the virtual tour.
On the virtual tour.
Yep.
You guys were very
Where
funny.
we held a
Jess
cell
had
phone.
goldfish. Grant gave me a history lesson.
That sounds about right. Yeah.
Yep.
over a video chat. Yeah. Justin, Morgan, you both have talked about being RAs, and I agree. That was something for me that really, in college, at a totally different institution than both of you and here, being an RA was something that kind of pointed me in the direction of being a resident director. I don't know that I would have considered it otherwise. For you all, as you've transitioned to that role of resident director, what are the most rewarding parts of your job? Jess, I'll come to you first if you're ready.
Wow. Okay.
Yes, Jess.
I think for me, it's just being able to see students succeed and grow and develop over time. And when I was over Carnegie, so fun fact, here at Erskine, I've been over every single female dorm at this point. And so when I was in Carnegie and had those freshman women, just watching them grow over their first year and even coming, they had some crazy stories, but seeing them come back for their sophomore year and how much they had grown since they stepped foot on campus. But even now, just overseeing upperclassmen, developing them to see what happens after graduation. I think that is super important to me and is really enjoyable. There are definitely parts of the job that are not, but watching them grow and develop and hearing about what they're doing after graduation or what they started like and what they are ending at is really cool to see.
Morgan, how about you?
I think I appreciate, similar to what Jess said, being there in the small victories when they do something that they've never done before, when they're struggling with something that maybe they haven't struggled before with, and it's a new thing that they're encountering. Being the person that someone will go to and say, hey, I need to talk to you, when they may have not even talked to their family or their coach or a classmate about, is in some ways really special. Not every person gets to experience that and gets to be that person. It comes with a lot of responsibility, but I think that that's also really rewarding to have a position on campus where you're trusted and where students are willing to come talk to you with almost anything. And I think that's probably one of the most rewarding things for me.
Yeah, I always find it interesting. I think growth comes into a lot of it. I know, Jess, you specifically talked about that, and Morgan, I think speaking from your experience and what you've shared is, being not a confidant, that might not be the right word, but being someone people can come to when they need something, being a resource, and that is fascinating. And they both play in together, obviously. Being able to speak life into someone helps them grow, and seeing people grow, you can step into their life when they need it, but that's always interesting. I think one thing that maybe sometimes it's a challenging question, but it makes me laugh. You guys deal with all these deep conversations with students and these big issues, but on the flip side of that, you also still live with a bunch of college students. So I'm sure there are some of your favorite, maybe funny or just things you've enjoyed about being an RD. If you have any stories you can share that are funny or enjoyable moments.
I don't know that I have anything that is like actually hilarious to everyone else. Like, it is funny in the moment, and it is funny to us as a staff, and then it happens and I tell other people and it's not actually funny.
It's sometimes not as funny except for in the moment.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, maybe then, this relates to other stuff. You've kind of already shared this, but maybe like what's an event or a practical thing that you do during the year that you enjoy most?
Oh goodness. I would say there's like two really big things that we do on campus that are probably super enjoyable, and one is Res Life Games, and it is always a good time. And more than anything, it's truly a competition between the RBs, not really between the student body.
Just a little bit.
we're all a little bit competitive, specifically Morgan and I, but just the enjoyment of having all the students together and compete with one another, dorm versus dorm, is super fun. So that's one really big event that we do. And then the other one that I think everyone enjoys, and RAs and students and the community, is Trick or Treat on the Circle. And so that's a really big event where we set up games and candy and around Halloween, and everyone from the community comes out and we just, have a good a time. But yeah, I would say Res Life Games, a lot of funny things come from that.
Yep.
And this year honors won, so I'm truly the reigning champ right now. So we'll see what happens next year. But yeah, I would say that those are two things that I really enjoy.
That's awesome. We'll definitely come back to some of those fun things that happen in the residence hall as I look ahead. But I'd be interested to hear. So Erskine, where we work, is a pretty small, tight community, and it is a Christian school. And so, working in residence life, what are some ways that the Christian values here at Erskine impact residence life?
Go ahead, Marks.
I would say they're the root of what we do in Res Life. It doesn't just impact it, it is why we all do what we do. It comes in the way that we do programming, the certain policies that we enforce in the dorms, the intentionality that we encourage with our RAs, with students, is all a byproduct of the Christian values that the school has. Not that non-Christian schools wouldn't have similar values, but I would say the reason that we have those values all stem back because we want Christian students to be supported and encouraged here, but we also want to reach the non-Christian students that come to Erskine and have them have positive, growing, challenging interactions with the Christian staff members here, as well as to challenge them on their values, for them to challenge us back, but to really leave that door open for there to be a lot of good, strong conversations about where everyone is in their faith walks. And so I would say, even in the way that I train my RAs, I want them to not just go out and do the job because they want to have fun or because they want to expand their friend network in some form or fashion. I want them to do the job because they have a goal and a purpose to impact people for Christ in a way that they may not have that same vision at a different school that they would go to.
Yeah, I would say that in Res Life, I think a big thing that we talk about is that residence life is a ministry, right? And so whether that's a ministry through the events that you're putting on your floor, or that community that you're building, or just those intentional conversations that you're having with each person, I think that is super important in the way that you can talk about your faith through those conversations, whether that's a student that, like Morgan said, doesn't know Christ, or someone who's really developed in their faith and just challenging them. And I would say that's something we do with both RAs and students. We're able to have those conversations, walk through what that looks like. And a big thing too is just like leading by example, or you as a RD doing the things that you want your RAs to do, and then even trickling down to your students, which I think is really big. We encourage everyone, our students and RAs, to go to church, and so by us going to church, that shows them, you can tag along, you can come with, even just things like that.
That's awesome. You guys live by default in a community with students, but sometimes a lot of students together in one place doesn't make it a community. So what do you guys see, and maybe Jess, you can answer this first, and I'll come back to you, Morgan, what are some ways that you all foster community in the dorms and residence halls on campus?
Yeah, I would say by putting on events. I think those can be small things like, there's pizza in the kitchen, or even something Apartments Villages do is a lot of cornhole, a lot of things outside to get people involved. And so putting something right in front of someone's face so that when they walk out their door, they don't really have a choice but to be there. And if they walk away, it's a little awkward. So just, giving them the chance to just meet new people, I think something that our RAs and we do as well is meeting different people on the floor in a building and connecting those two people together from something that's really minimal and something that they probably would have never known about the person down the hall until they were set up to talk to one another. And that happens through roommates, which can be random or set up, but I think a lot of that intentionality or community comes from those conversations one-on-one, or even in the group setting where they get to talk to people that maybe they never have before.
Yeah, that's awesome. Morgan, how about in your areas? How do you help foster community?
I would say on a more practical level, I make all of my RAs learn their resident's name, and I want them to address their residents by name when they're on the floor and off the floor. So if they walk past them in Moffett, not that they need to be addressing 10 people trying to get their sandwich, but when they're intentionally, like if they make eye contact, to even just say, hey Amanda, how's it going? Or to know the names of their people. I think that does a lot for community on campus, to know that they are seen and acknowledged around. I also really encourage my RAs as much as they can, which depends on the RA, how extroverted, introverted they are, if they have a roommate or not, but to keep their doors open so that when people, the RA rooms are usually middle of the floor or the hallway that they live on. So when people are walking past, they can see the RA can see them, they can encourage them to come in the room, hang out, talk with them. I also try really hard to just keep tabs on floors in general and residents to know how each person is doing. If I hear of a student that's struggling to connect and is not finding a network, to encourage someone to go find them, invite them to an event personally with them, to connect two students together if we know, hey, these two have similar interests but they've never met. And so I even do that if I'm a part of a dorm event. I'll go knock on doors, and it's just a little funny for the RD to do that. But I'll be like, hey guys, come out. I want to like introduce you to so-and-so, and have you tried this before? Let's do it together. Like I haven't either.
Yeah.
And so a lot of it is just being really intentional and aware of the residents that I do have, and then trying to network them together to each other. Oh yes, I have a lot of tips. So
Here we
many
go.
tips.
Sit down.
Here's
I'll take
Morgan's
some
list
notes.
for
Here we
you
go.
guys. I'd say get out of your room, especially in those first 6 weeks. I have yet to meet a student that says, yes, I was thankful that I sat in my room all of my time in college and played video games. That is not something that I think you will ever hear very frequently. But you do hear students say, oh, I'm so thankful that I got in touch with this group and that I attended this student group and got engaged, or that I went to these sporting events and met this set of people there. So I always say Erskine is a pretty active campus. Go to the in-person sporting events, go to the events on campus that Campus Life puts on, go to the ministry events that RUF, BCM, FCA all put on campus, as well as, let's say, sit with different people in the cafeteria. If you're on a team, be intentional to get outside of your team, meet other different sets, meet other teams, but also go sit with all the students that aren't on teams and hear what they're doing and what they're up to and what they're passionate about. Sit with other staff members. That can be really good to help get you out of your bubble. And if you feel really awkward and you don't know how to make conversation with other students, a staff member can be really good at helping you network to the right set of students. I think I frequently hear, oh, I didn't make friends my first semester because I didn't find anyone that I was interested in. And I think we have a whole department that Jess and I work in where our job is to help get students connected to other students. So if you would come and talk to me, I could have helped connect you to the right set of students that you might have engaged a little bit more with. I would say on that same note, talk to your RAs. The RAs genuinely want to be friends and have relationships with the people on their floors and in their hallways. So engage with those people, get outside of your bubble on that sense. I would also say if you've been a student leader in high school, meet the other student leaders on campus because they love taking in someone who will help them with their student group or someone that they think would be a good student leader in the future. And so be friends with the student leaders. They're usually very welcoming and friendly. They're some of the first people you'll meet on campus because they're usually part of our welcome crew. So yeah, just get out of your room, and if in doubt, find an RD and we'll help you.
What do you think, Jess? What are some ways students can kind of get the most out of dorm life in general even?
I think it's hard when you like don't live in a dorm specifically where you can like walk out of your room or you have to like share a bathroom with someone else. So I think that is like apartment life. But I think like even like Morgan said, there's people everywhere on a college campus. And so whether that's in your classroom or in the dining hall, I think is huge, like sitting with other people. But even you have classes with different people every day. And so whether that's in a small group when you're, have a class project or something like that, just I've seen people meet people through that, and so they're able to connect and say, where do you live, that type of thing, and they get involved on a floor that maybe isn't their floor, which is what we want. We want people to get involved. They don't have to stick to their specific building.
Yep.
So I would just say, like Morgan said, get out of your room, meet new people, have those little awkward conversations that aren't fun, but you can do it, and you might find someone through that. But also just going to sporting events is huge too. There's always a student section. You can always sit with others that maybe you don't know, and whether we win or lose, you're able to cheer on Erskine, hopefully. So I think that is even a way that they can get involved as well.
Yeah. Don't walk away from the event you walk out to, is what you're saying.
Right. If you go outside and there's an event in front of you, please go to it.
Just go to it.
Yeah.
Embrace the
It
awkward.
will not hurt.
Oh, I have one final little tip on that one.
Give your final tip. It doesn't have to be your final tip. If
My
you think of
final
more.
tip, no. My little brother came and visited. I'd never even thought of this when I was giving ideas for how to meet people on campus. My little brother came and visited, and he spent 3 afternoons in Snappers playing pool and ping pong. And he would just go in there, he'd find someone who's playing pool by themselves and ask if they wanted to play a game. And Caleb's not even a student here yet. He's coming in the fall. He probably walked away from Erskine with 15 fairly decent connections for being on campus for 2 weeks, just from spending afternoons playing pool and ping pong with people. So if you're wondering where to go, and that way if there's awkward silence, it's okay, because you can focus on the game.
Yeah.
You don't have to talk, but you can talk if you want to. And I think that was a really unique way that he managed to network, and I would love to see more students meet other people in that way as well.
Go to it's called the Student Center for a reason, right?
Yep.
That's what it's for. That makes sense. You two live with students, whether you currently walk out your door and are in the middle of a residence hall, or you walk out your door and you can see other places students live on a day-to-day basis. Especially for potentially like an incoming student living on college campus for the first time, what are some of the do's and don'ts of res hall life?
Go ahead, Morgs.
I would say I'll start off with don'ts, and then we'll give a couple do's. I'd say realize that the dorm life is living around 100 different women, at least in Carnegie. If you've gone from your house where you may have had your own room, or at max you lived with up to 10 other people if you have a really big family. Maybe you're from a bigger family than that. But that can be really shocking to move to a dorm where you're living with 100 other people. And dorm life is loud. Even with quiet hours, I cannot make 100 freshman women be quiet. The people above you may have 5 a.m. practice. That people below you may have had practice till 10 p.m. And so it can just be a louder environment. So I would say don't get frustrated easily with the noise in the building. We do our best to control that to what we can, but instead of being frustrated, channel that into realizing that you live in a place that's awake and active and wants to be, that is participating in campus life, that's doing things, and use that as an opportunity to get to know your upstairs neighbor or your downstairs neighbor. I would say don't be frustrated by the fact that you might have to wait for a shower or wait for a laundry machine at home. That's usually fairly accessible to you, but when you only have a couple machines to a whole building, that can be an easy point of contention for students. And so I would just say, set your expectations before you come to Erskine. You're living in old historic buildings, which are really cool, or in Jess's case, like fairly new townhouses, which both have really unique advantages to it, but also can come with drawbacks when it comes to not having the amenities that you're used to having immediately available to you. And while we do try our best, you're sharing that with 100 other people. So be really gracious when looking at dorm life and understand that dorm life is not house life. And I am not your mom, but I do want to give you the best experience that I can. And if it's in any way something that I can help make a better situation, I do. But just set your expectations ahead of time to know, hey, I'm going to move in with 100 people. And with that, how to make the best out of dorm life. I've seen so many students take a freshman or that's struggling a little bit. Maybe it's a transfer living in Carnegie, or someone who's a little bit older who's coming in with a couple dual enrollment credits or took a gap year, take on another freshman and really mentor them, help them with schoolwork. So if that is you, if you do really well at academics, see who in your area might struggle and be a friend to them, support them. They will appreciate that for as long as they go through school. I was the freshman that needed help. I had a really smart friend that got me through my freshman year. And after that, that's how I actually learned how to study and did really well once that I was through that. But not everyone had that experience in high school. So if that is you, give that to another student, but also seek that out if you need that, because you're in a building full of women that are generally willing to help each other out if they just know that that's what you need. So.
Do you have anything to add, Jess?
Man,
Did
Morgan.
you take all of yours?
Sorry.
No, not all of them. I would say probably like a big thing is advocate for yourself. I think that's huge coming in, whether you're a freshman or an upperclassman. But like Morgan said, you're living in an historic building, you're living in buildings that are old, and something that we hear a lot is just like, I don't know how to put in a work order. Well, there's people around you that do, and the RDs are not here to put in your work orders for you. But I think just advocating for yourself in that sense of, I don't know how to do this, but I'm going to go find someone that does. Or looking for that upperclassman that knows how to help you, or knows the things around campus or where to go for your classes. Just being prepared to come to college. And I would say maybe a thing not to do is maybe don't bring your whole house or your whole room with you when you move in. The dorm rooms are not that big at any institution that you go to, and so when you bring your whole room or everything that you own, you have to remember there's 2 people or more going into a room, and all that stuff is not going to fit. So I think that's a big thing when I think of don'ts for college, is like, do not bring everything. It does not need to be your truck, your dad's truck, your grandpa's truck, the trailer, all the things.
We don't need a U-Haul.
And if you do bring that, that's fine. We'll figure out a way to put it in the room.
We'll put it in your room.
But yeah,
it will physically go in your room.
Right. It may not be set up the best, but it'll go in there. So.
That's an impressive promise right there. We're gonna get it in your room.
The door
it will all
may
fit
not
in your
shut.
room.
That's so funny.
And the door will shut.
It will? Okay.
The door needs to shut.
It will shut.
So I feel like the hypothetical person we've talked about would bring everything they need. But for someone else, what would be, if you could pick one thing that people don't remember to bring or wouldn't think to bring immediately to college? This is a hard question. I'm prefacing you. If you could tell people one thing to bring to college that most people forget or wouldn't think of, what would you say they should bring?
I would say for freshmen at Erskine, freshman women, I would encourage you guys to bring minimal cooking supplies. A baking sheet, a pot, maybe a frying pan, a spatula, that kind of thing. Nothing crazy, nothing involved. It could all fit into one bin. The number of students who have knocked on my door asking me for a pot this semester or a baking sheet, I probably get a knock every single week asking for some piece of cooking ware. So I would say bring your cooking ware. We do not have we have a kitchen for students to use. We don't have pots and pans and a bunch of appliances in there. We do have basic appliances, a toaster, microwave, oven, all of that, but don't bring tons of appliances. Some students love their air fryers. Don't put a toaster in your room, please don't. Nothing with open heating. But a pot, a pan, and a couple utensils to use are usually pretty helpful.
I would say also, along with baking supplies, probably just cleaning supplies in general. Like, your room's gonna get dirty, whether that's, your desk needs wiped down or the floor needs swept. And you can always go and get those things, but I think that is a big thing too. Like, bring things to clean up after yourself, whether that's in your room or after your roommate. I don't see students always bring those things that they need at the time.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I will say, somebody told me this in college. They said whenever you move somewhere new, don't bring everything you need, because bring everything that you'll need to survive, but don't bring absolutely everything, because if you're missing something like a baking pan, it's a good opportunity to go meet people by knocking on their doors to ask if they have a baking pan. And then you can give them a cookie in payment for using their baking pan and start a conversation. Yeah. So sometimes that can be a really cool way if you're wondering, how do I meet people in a not awkward way? It can be as simple as, hey, I bought a bunch of cookie making supplies, but I actually don't have a pan. And that can be a really good way to connect with people. So don't bring absolutely everything you need. Strategically forget one thing.
Right.
So if you want to gain favor in a residence hall, bake people cookies. That's what I'm hearing. Yeah,
it will
Bring
work.
things to cook people food. Yeah. So far, I've heard a lot of good things from both of you about, I think, really learning to advocate for yourself and learning, not that your parents aren't great, but how to kind of grow into an adult and how to handle those situations on your own and step into those. And maybe part of that is also being willing to step up to have, whether it's an awkward conversation, to get to know someone or to address someone being too loud when they wake up at 5 a.m., in a kind way from both of you. I'd be interested to hear, and this is kind of a curveball, but I promise nothing too crazy.
Okay.
I would love to hear if you were giving advice to a student who's preparing to enter college somewhere who isn't you particularly, but maybe is similar to how you were before you entered college. What's one piece of advice that you would give them?
I think learning that it's okay to fail and not fail your classes. That's not what I'm saying. But every step you take or everything that you reach out and try to do, you're not going to be excellent at. So knowing that okay, if I'm not, the best at everything, that's okay. And just giving yourself that opportunity or that little bit of leeway to say, okay, I'm not the best and I don't have to be good at this. I think sometimes students go out and try everything and then they quickly realize I'm not good at all this stuff. And so just being able to fail something, and if you are failing, ask for help specifically in a class, but just knowing I don't have to be the best and there's other people around me that can help me pick up in areas that maybe I'm not as good at.
I would say if it's an incoming student to Erskine specifically, usually you're going to play a sport in college because you love that sport in your time in high school. Maybe did really well, which is why you're getting a college scholarship for it. Understand that it can be a little bit hard as a freshman to go from potentially starting games all in high school to never start in college in your first year here, and that can be really frustrating and really hard, and that can I think it can make you feel like a failure in some ways, or it can make you feel useless to be at the top of your game in high school and all of a sudden the bottom of the totem pole in college. I would say rather than seeing that as something that gets you down, see that as an opportunity to either use your freshman or sophomore year to pour into other areas on campus. Maybe you won't be the starting person on your team, but you could be the star person that helps campus events go really, really well. And so I would say instead of using that as something that gets you down, is really frustrating to you, acknowledge that might happen, might not, but acknowledge that might happen, and then make a plan for how you're mentally or emotionally going to handle that if it comes to it. The number of students I've sat with who are like, this is not what I expected. I was a leader in all these ways in high school, and now I'm not doing anything here. It just makes my heart sad because I'm like, there's so many ways that you could be a really, really good benefit to Erskine's community, that you could grow the community, challenge it, and serve it in a way other than your sport. But because the sport is the thing that is most fulfilling, can be hardest for the student to handle. So maybe come up with just 1 or 2 action plans of, hey, if I'm not starting or I'm not on the travel roster, I want to reallocate that time to this. And have a couple ways that you're going to do that, so that when you are feeling down, you can go look at that again and say, hey, I already made a plan. I knew that this was potentially going to happen. So what am I going to do now? And you already have some action steps for it.
Well, I think what's interesting about what both of you just shared is I think they relate to all students as well in that, when you come into college for the first time, at least I felt like this, you can feel kind of like a small fish in a big pond, and you can come from, whether you're on a team or whether it's your social life or whether it's an organization you're involved with, you come in and it can feel like it is a reset, right? You kind of lose those connections, and you lose maybe the leadership position you had on your team, or being president of a yearbook, or the huge social circle you had amassed. And I think one thing I wish I had known, or I would tell someone, is recognizing that everybody's kind of in that same boat. And like you talked about, and when you talked about not being afraid to fail, be willing to step up and look for your place. And if you start going down a path and it's not your place, it's okay to open up to people and tell them that it's not right for you. But there's definitely opportunity wherever you are, especially on a small campus, to explore those opportunities for sure.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate you all coming out today and taking time out of your day to sit here and have this conversation with us, for potential students, hopefully, and anyone else who may be watching. For those of you who are joining us, thank you for tuning in again. I hope you want to learn more about, I'm going to just do this whole part again because I'm just going to just keep talking. Blah, blah, blah. Let Morgan stop laughing.
I'm not always like this.
That is not true. That is totally not true. Wait a minute. It's just hard for you to stop. Well, thank you both for taking time out of your day to come here and join us. For those of you watching, if you want to learn more about Erskine in particular, you can visit our website at erskine.edu. And I hope you've learned something great from these two resident directors about life on campus, or just how to get plugged in. So thanks again, guys.
Thanks,
you.